You know that moment when you think you've seen everything in life? Well, I'd been organizing weddings for 5 years and thought I knew every possible type of family drama. Turns out I was wrong when I got married. Because apparently, Trevor didn't understand that "till death do us part" doesn't mean "until I find the hotel receptionist." Hi, I'm Madison Clark, 29 years old, wedding planner by profession, and apparently expert in turning personal tragedies into mental stand-up comedy. If you think organizing other people's weddings is stressful, try living through your own marital disaster in real time. It's like being the director, actress, and audience of your own romantic catastrophe. The situation started on the 3rd day of our honeymoon in Maui. I was there, all zen, planning our romantic breakfast on the balcony of room 247, which I now call the crime scene against matrimonial decency. Picture this: turquoise ocean, perfect weather, tropical breeze, and me thinking I was living my own romantic movie. Spoiler alert, it was more like a horror film with a comedy soundtrack. I decided to surprise my beloved with tropical fruits from the hotel's gourmet market. You know, being the perfect new wife, creating those Instagram-worthy moments that would make all my single friends hate me just a little bit more. I even bought one of those fancy fruit arrangements that costs more than some people's rent. The irony? I was about to get a surprise that would make me question every romantic comedy I'd ever watched. Walking through the Four Seasons lobby at 10 p.m., carrying this ridiculous fruit basket like some sort of tropical offering to the marriage gods, I spotted Trevor near the concierge desk. My first thought was, how sweet, he's probably planning another surprise for me. My second thought, about 3 seconds later, was more along the lines of, what the actual heck is happening here? There was Trevor, my husband of exactly 72 hours, having what I can only describe as an intimate conversation with Amber, 23 years old, night shift receptionist who apparently works very specific shifts. And by intimate conversation, I mean the kind where personal space becomes a foreign concept and hand gestures involve a lot of touching. I stood there, frozen, holding my overpriced fruit basket like some kind of tropical scarecrow, watching my brand new husband flirt with a girl who looked like she still got carded at movie theaters. The professional wedding planner in me was taking mental notes. Groom displays inappropriate behavior with hotel staff, 72 hours post-ceremony. Recommend immediate consultation with divorce attorney. And my first reaction? Seriously, Trevor? 3 days? You couldn't even wait a full week to make me look like an idiot. But you know what's more pathetic? He tried to convince me they were discussing local activities. Local activities, Trevor? The only local activity I witnessed was you practicing diving into her neckline. The conversation I interrupted went something like this. Oh, hey, Madison. Perfect timing. Amber here was just telling me about this amazing snorkeling spot that's totally off the beaten path. Right, I said, my voice so sweet it could have given the pineapple in my basket diabetes. And does this snorkeling spot require you to whisper directly into her ear? Because the acoustics in this lobby seem just fine to me. Amber, bless her heart, turned approximately 17 shades of red and suddenly remembered she had urgent reception duties to attend to. Trevor, meanwhile, gave me that patronizing smile I was starting to recognize, the one that said, "You're being dramatic, and I'm going to gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Madison, you're being paranoid. We were just talking." Just talking? Trevor, you were closer to her than I was to you during our wedding vows. And trust me, I have photographic evidence of that distance. The funniest part? I'd seen this movie before, multiple times. I'd organized weddings where grooms had cold feet, where brides discovered affairs, where families imploded spectacularly. I'd developed a sixth sense for romantic disasters. I could spot a cheating spouse from across a crowded reception hall. But apparently, my professional radar doesn't work when it comes to my own husband. Standing there in that pristine hotel lobby, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, holding a fruit basket that now felt like props in a really bad comedy sketch, I had what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience. I was simultaneously the wedding planner who'd seen everything, and the naive bride who'd seen nothing. You know what, Trevor? You're absolutely right. You were just talking. and now I'm going to do some talking of my own, starting with a very interesting conversation with my lawyer back in Portland. His face went through more color changes than a Hawaiian sunset. Madison, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting. Overreacting? Honey, I plan weddings for a living. I've seen every possible variation of marital disaster. What I haven't seen is a groom hitting on hotel staff during his honeymoon. So congratulations. You just gave me a new story for my professional repertoire. That's when it hit me. The beautiful, terrible, absolutely perfect irony of the situation. Here I was, Madison Clark, the woman who'd built her career on creating perfect romantic moments, standing in paradise, watching her own romance crumble like a poorly structured wedding cake. But instead of crying, instead of causing a scene, instead of letting Trevor see me broken, I did something that surprised even me. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a hysterical laugh, but a genuine, this is so absurd it's almost artistic laugh. You know what the really funny part is, Trevor? I've spent 5 years planning other people's happily ever afters, and I couldn't even spot the red flags in my own relationship. My professional reputation is built on attention to detail, and I missed the biggest detail of all, that I married a man who can't keep his attention focused for 72 consecutive hours. The next morning, I woke up alone in our supposedly romantic suite. Trevor had spent the night thinking, which, translated from cheater language, means texting Amber and trying to figure out damage control. I found him on the balcony, looking like a man who'd discovered that paradise comes with consequences. "Morning, sunshine," I said, pouring myself coffee with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered her husband's attention span was shorter than our marriage certificate. "Sleep well? Or should I say, sleep at all? Madison, we need to talk." "Oh, we absolutely do. But first, let me tell you about the fascinating phone call I had with my office this morning. You remember my office, right? The place where I plan weddings? Where I've developed an expertise in reading people and situations?" Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Good. Discomfort was the least he deserved. I called my assistant Jennifer to check on the Morrison wedding we're handling next week. You know what she said? "Madison, you sound different, stronger, like you've gained some perspective. Isn't that interesting? Here I am, supposedly on my honeymoon, and I'm gaining perspective. What kind of perspective do you think that might be, Trevor?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "Look, about last night." "About last night? Oh, Trevor. Let's definitely talk about last night. But first, let me share some professional insights I've gathered during my 5 years in the wedding industry. Did you know that 43% of affairs begin during significant life transitions? Weddings, honeymoons, job changes. It's fascinating, really. The statistics suggest that some people use major commitments as an excuse to seek novelty elsewhere. I was in full professional mode now, treating my personal disaster like a case study. It was either that or throw my coffee mug at his head, and I'd grown quite attached to the hotel's breakfast service. "You're being clinical," he said. "I'm being practical. You see, Trevor, when you've planned as many weddings as I have, you develop pattern recognition. Last night, watching you with Amber, I recognized every single red flag I'd learned to spot in other people's relationships. The excessive friendliness, the unnecessary physical contact, the way you positioned your body to exclude me from the conversation. It was like watching a masterclass in How to Disrespect Your Spouse 101. Trevor tried to interrupt, but I was on a roll. Professional Madison was taking over, and she had charts. I've seen this before, you know. The Henderson wedding last year? Groom spent the entire reception flirting with the maid of honor. They're divorced now. The Patterson anniversary party? Husband couldn't stop complimenting the caterer's attention to detail. They're separated. The Williams engagement party? Fiancé kept finding excuses to talk to the photographer. Wedding canceled. Madison, you're comparing me to every other man I've watched destroy his relationship through sheer stupidity? Yes, Trevor, I absolutely am. Because guess what? You're not special. You're not unique. You're just another guy who thought he could have his cake and eat it too. Except in this case, the cake was a 23-year-old receptionist with questionable judgment and excellent customer service skills. I stood up, pacing around our ridiculously expensive balcony like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury. You want to know what's really funny? I spent our entire engagement telling people how mature you were, how ready you were for commitment. My mother-in-law, my soon-to-be former mother-in-law, kept saying I was too demanding and that I needed to trust the process. Well, Donna, I trusted the process. And the process led me to room 247 in paradise, watching my husband of 3 days audition for a relationship replacement. Trevor was getting defensive now. You're being unfair. Nothing happened with Amber. Nothing happened? Trevor, you were practically performing a mating ritual in the hotel lobby. If I hadn't interrupted, you would have been discussing local activities until sunrise. And you know what the most insulting part is? You chose someone who works in hospitality. I plan weddings, Trevor. I know how to read people in service positions. Amber was being professionally polite, and you interpreted that as romantic interest. You're not just a cheater, you're a delusional cheater. The professional analysis was helping me maintain some emotional distance, but underneath the clinical observations, I was furious. 5 years of relationship, 6 months of engagement planning, 1 beautiful wedding, and 72 hours of marriage, all thrown away for a conversation with a hotel employee who was literally paid to be nice to him. I've been thinking about our relationship, I continued, and I realize I've been treating you like one of my clients. You know what I do with clients who don't respect boundaries? I fire them. The difference is, usually I can spot the problematic ones before they sign the contract. Trevor tried a different approach. Madison, I love you. Last night was a preview of coming attractions. You know how I know? Because I've seen this movie before. Multiple times. At multiple weddings. The only difference is, this time I'm not the wedding planner trying to salvage someone else's relationship disaster. I'm the star of my own romantic comedy gone wrong. I laughed, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. You know what my biggest professional mistake was? I believed in love. I believed in commitment. I believed in the fairy tale. And you know what? I still do. I just don't believe in it with you. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a woman who'd built her career on creating perfect romantic moments, having the most unromantic conversation of my life in one of the most romantic places on earth. The view from our balcony was absolutely stunning. Crystal clear water, pristine beaches, swaying palm trees, and all I could think about was how much I wanted to be anywhere else. I called my lawyer this morning, I said casually, like I was discussing the weather. Sarah Peterson. You remember her, right? She handled the contracts for the Sullivan wedding. Turns out she also handles divorces. Who knew? Trevor's face went completely pale. Madison, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm absolutely serious. In fact, I'm more serious than I've ever been about anything in my life. You see, Trevor, when you've planned as many weddings as I have, you learn to think ahead. Contingency plans, backup options, exit strategies. I always wondered why I was so good at that part of the job. Turns out I was preparing for this exact moment. The beauty of being a wedding planner is that you develop exceptional organizational skills. The tragedy of being a wedding planner is that you can organize anything, including your own divorce. While Trevor spent the morning processing our conversation, probably texting Amber about relationship troubles, I was in full logistics mode. Step 1, change my flight. Instead of flying back to Portland with my beloved husband, I booked myself a solo return ticket for the following week. If I was going to be miserable, I might as well be miserable in paradise with room service and unlimited poolside cocktails. Step 2, cancel our shared accommodations. Nothing says marriage over like requesting separate rooms during your honeymoon. The hotel staff handled it with the kind of professional discretion that made me appreciate good customer service even more. Unlike some people, they understood boundaries. Step 3, activate my professional network. You'd be amazed how many divorce attorneys are friends with wedding planners. We see the same families, just at different stages of the relationship life cycle. Sarah Peterson wasn't just my lawyer. She was my wedding vendor who'd seen enough romantic disasters to appreciate the irony of my situation. Madison, honey, I'm so sorry, Sarah said during our video call. But I have to admit, the timing is almost poetic. Betrayed during your honeymoon by a man you literally just promised to love, honor, and cherish? That's grounds for the fastest divorce in Oregon history. How fast are we talking? I asked, taking notes like I was planning an event, which, in a way, I was. Given the circumstances, the timeline, and the fact that you have witnesses to his inappropriate behavior, we could have papers filed before you even get back to Portland. I'll need you to document everything. Times, dates, names, witnesses. Think of it like planning a very different kind of ceremony. The irony was delicious. I was using the same organizational skills that made me excellent at weddings to plan my divorce. Color-coded spreadsheets, detailed timelines, vendor coordination. Except instead of flowers and photographers, I was dealing with legal documents and asset division. Step 4. Gather evidence. This is where my professional training really paid off. I'd learned to document everything for wedding planning purposes, and those same skills applied perfectly to documenting marital misconduct. Hotel security footage, witness statements from other guests, Trevor's own text messages. I was building a case like I was building a wedding timeline. The hotel manager, Mr. Yamamoto, was surprisingly helpful. Mrs. Clark, I want to apologize for any unprofessional behavior from our staff. We take these matters very seriously. Oh, Mr. Yamamoto, Amber wasn't the problem. She was just doing her job. The problem was my husband's inability to recognize professional courtesy when he saw it. But I do appreciate your concern, and I'll definitely be including your cooperation in my review of the Four Seasons experience. Even in crisis, I couldn't help but network. Professional habits die hard. Step 5. Reframe the narrative. Instead of being the tragic bride betrayed on her honeymoon, I decided to become the empowered woman who turned a romantic disaster into a liberation vacation. It was all about perspective, really. I started documenting my transformation on social media with carefully crafted posts that told the story without telling the story. Sometimes the best part of a journey is discovering you don't need a travel companion. Paradise hits different when you're not sharing it with someone who doesn't appreciate what they have. Learning to love my own company in one of the most beautiful places on earth. The responses were immediate and supportive. My friends knew something was up, but they also knew I'd share details when I was ready. In the meantime, they were cheering me on from afar, and their support gave me the confidence to see this through. Step 6. Professional consultation. I called my mentor, Patricia Morrison, who'd been in the wedding industry for 30 years. She'd seen everything, survived everything, and had the wisdom to help me navigate this particular disaster. Madison, sweetheart, I'm not surprised, she said. I met Trevor at your engagement party, remember? He spent the entire evening trying to impress my assistant instead of celebrating with you. I should have said something then, but I figured you'd see it eventually. You saw it at our engagement party? I was simultaneously grateful and mortified. Honey, when you've been in this business as long as I have, you develop radar for these things. Trevor has what I call grass is greener syndrome. He's always looking for the next exciting thing, the next adventure, the next conquest. Marriage was never going to cure that. It was strangely comforting to know that my professional instincts weren't completely broken. I'd sensed something was off, but I'd attributed it to pre-wedding nerves. Now I was wondering how many other red flags I'd rationalized away. Step 7. Emotional preparation. This was the hardest part. I had to prepare myself for the fact that my marriage, my beautiful, carefully planned, Pinterest-perfect wedding, had been a complete mistake. Not just a mistake, but a public mistake that everyone we knew would eventually hear about. But you know what? I'd rather be divorced than delusional. I'd rather be alone than with someone who couldn't appreciate what he had. I'd rather be the woman who had the strength to walk away than the woman who stayed and pretended everything was fine. My plan was so discreet, even the CIA would have taken notes. Between coffee breaks, I was orchestrating the end of my marriage with the same precision I'd used to plan the beginning. The only difference was, this time, I was the only one who needed to be happy with the results. Trevor, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. He thought he was dealing with a jealous wife who'd overreacted to an innocent conversation. He had no idea he was dealing with a professional event planner who'd decided to plan his exit from her life. Madison, I think we should talk about what happens next, he said that evening. finding me on the beach with a book and a cocktail. "Oh, we absolutely should," I agreed. "But first, let me ask you something. In your professional opinion, as a financial consultant, what would you say happens to joint assets when a marriage ends due to adultery within the first week?" The look on his face was priceless. Pure panic mixed with confusion, like he'd just realized he'd been playing chess while I'd been playing 4D chess. "Madison, you're not serious about divorce." "Trevor, I'm not just serious about divorce. I'm professionally committed to it. This is happening, and it's happening efficiently, thoroughly, and with minimal drama. Consider it my final gift to you. A clean, quick exit from a marriage you clearly weren't ready for. The beauty of being organized is that when everything falls apart, you're ready." By day 5 of our supposed honeymoon, I'd transformed from heartbroken bride to strategic mastermind. Trevor was still trying to convince me that his midnight chat with Amber was innocent, while I was already 3 steps ahead, orchestrating the most efficient divorce in Hawaiian vacation history. "Madison, this is insane," Trevor said, finding me at the hotel's business center where I'd been video conferencing with lawyers, accountants, and my assistant back in Portland. "You're acting like I committed some huge crime." "Oh, Trevor, you're absolutely right. Disrespecting your wife of 3 days isn't a crime. It's just really, really stupid. But you know what is legally significant? The timing. Did you know that marriages dissolved within the first week can be treated differently in Oregon?" Sarah explained it to me in detail this morning. I showed him my laptop screen, where I'd organized everything in a neat spreadsheet. Column A, joint assets. Column B, individual assets. Column C, debts. Column D, who gets what when someone can't keep their attention focused for 72 hours. Trevor's face went through more color changes than a mood ring. "You can't be serious about all this." "I'm absolutely serious. In fact, I'm more serious than I've ever been about anything in my professional life. You see, Trevor, when you've planned as many weddings as I have, you learn to think in terms of logistics. Guest lists, vendor contracts, timeline management, crisis control. Turns out, all those skills transfer beautifully to divorce proceedings." The hotel staff had been watching our drama unfold with the kind of professional discretion that made me appreciate good service even more. Mr. Yamamoto had even arranged for me to have a private meeting room where I could handle my business calls without disturbing other guests. "Mrs. Clark," he said during one of our brief interactions, "I want you to know that the staff has been very impressed with how you've handled this situation. Very professional, very dignified. Thank you, Mr. Yamamoto. You know, after 5 years of managing wedding crises, I've learned that grace under pressure is the most valuable skill you can develop. Whether it's a missing bouquet or a missing husband, the principles are the same." The real turning point came when I discovered Trevor's credit card statements. Remember, I'm a wedding planner. I'm detail-oriented. I notice things. And what I noticed was a pattern of charges that told a very different story than the one Trevor had been telling me. "Trevor, we need to discuss your financial planning skills," I said, cornering him by the pool where he'd been sulking for the past 2 days. "Specifically, your ability to plan for multiple relationships simultaneously." I spread out the credit card statements like I was presenting a wedding budget. February 14th, dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, but I was in Chicago for the Morrison wedding consultation. March 3rd, weekend at the Napa Valley Inn, but I was handling the Peterson anniversary party. March 20th, jewelry purchase at Tiffany's, but I never received any jewelry from Tiffany's. Trevor's face went completely white. "Madison, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. But here's the thing, Trevor. I don't need explanations anymore. I need documentation. And thanks to your excellent record keeping, I have plenty of that." This was better than any wedding vendor contract I'd ever negotiated. I had facts, figures, dates, and evidence. I had a paper trail that told the story of a man who'd been planning his exit from our relationship even before we'd walked down the aisle. "You know what's really funny?" I continued, enjoying the moment more than I probably should have. "I spent months planning our wedding, thinking I was creating the beginning of our life together. Meanwhile, you were planning, well, apparently you were planning everything except our life together." The other hotel guests were starting to notice our conversations. I could see them whispering, pointing, clearly invested in the drama unfolding at the Four Seasons. Part of me was embarrassed, but a bigger part of me was oddly proud. I was handling this crisis with the same professionalism I brought to work every day. I never imagined that a signature on a piece of paper would leave so many grown men pale, I said to Sarah during our final video call. And look, nobody was particularly artistic to begin with. The legal proceedings were moving faster than I'd expected. Apparently, when you have documentation, witnesses, and a clear timeline of misconduct, the courts are remarkably efficient. Trevor's lawyer was already suggesting settlement negotiations. Madison, please, let's talk about this rationally. Trevor tried one last time. We are talking about it rationally. Very rationally. In fact, I've never been more rational in my life. You wanted to explore your options, Trevor? Well, now you can. You're about to be a single man with plenty of time to chat with hotel staff all over the world. The revelation that was divertida, surprising and triumphant, came when I realized that I wasn't just ending my marriage. I was reclaiming my life. All those months of planning a wedding, all that energy focused on we and us and our future, and I'd somehow lost track of me. You know what the best part is? I told Jennifer during our daily check-in call. I'm remembering who I was before I was half of a couple. I'm remembering why I fell in love with wedding planning in the first place. It wasn't about the romance, it was about the logistics, the problem-solving, the crisis management, the ability to create something beautiful out of chaos. Trevor's attempts at reconciliation were getting more desperate. Madison, I'll do anything. Couples therapy, relationship coaching, whatever you want. Trevor, you know what I want? I want you to be happy. I want you to find someone who appreciates midnight conversations with hotel staff. I want you to discover that grass isn't always greener. Sometimes it's just different, and I want you to do all of that without me. The final paperwork was signed on what would have been our 1-week anniversary. I was sitting on the beach, watching the sunset, when Sarah called to confirm that everything was official. Madison, it's done. You're officially divorced. How do you feel? I took a sip of my Mai Tai and looked out at the Pacific Ocean. I feel lighter, like I've just finished planning the most important event of my life, my own freedom. 6 months later, I was back in Portland, stronger than ever, with a business that was thriving and a perspective that money couldn't buy. The story of my honeymoon disaster had become legendary in the wedding planning community, not as a cautionary tale, but as an inspiration. I'd turned my personal crisis into professional wisdom, and my clients were getting the benefit of my hard-earned experience. Madison, I have to ask, said Jennifer, my assistant, as we finished setting up for the Rodriguez wedding. Do you ever regret how you handled the whole Trevor situation? I paused, thinking about the question seriously. You know what I regret? I regret not trusting my instincts sooner. I regret ignoring the red flags during our engagement. I regret spending so much energy trying to make someone else happy that I forgot to prioritize my own happiness. The Rodriguez wedding was beautiful, intimate, authentic, and filled with the kind of genuine love that I'd somehow convinced myself I had with Trevor. Watching Maria and Carlos exchange vows, seeing the way they looked at each other, I realized what I'd been missing in my own relationship. But here's what I don't regret, I continued, adjusting Maria's veil. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret refusing to accept behavior that was unacceptable. I don't regret choosing dignity over desperation. My business had actually grown since the divorce. Word had gotten out about how I'd handled my personal crisis, and couples were specifically requesting me because they knew I understood the importance of genuine commitment. I'd become the wedding planner who could spot relationship red flags before they became altar disasters. Madison, said Carlos's mother during the reception, Maria told me about your situation. I want you to know that we chose you specifically because we knew you wouldn't let us make a mistake. You have wisdom that comes from experience. It was the kind of compliment that made all the pain worth it. I'd turned my personal disaster into professional insight, and my clients were getting married with eyes wide open instead of rose-colored glasses. The funniest part was the updates I'd hear about Trevor. Apparently, his relationship with Amber had lasted exactly 3 weeks after our divorce was finalized. She'd discovered that a man who would cheat on his wife during their honeymoon might not be the most reliable partner. Who could have seen that coming? "He's been texting me," I told Sarah during one of our regular coffee meetings, "asking if we can talk about what went wrong." "And what do you tell him?" "Nothing. I block the number and move on. I've learned that some people want to have conversations about their behavior so they can feel better about themselves, not so they can actually change. I'm not interested in being Trevor's therapist." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career helping people plan the beginning of their marriages, and my own marriage had taught me about the importance of planning your exit strategy. Not in a cynical way, but in a realistic way. Love is important, but so is self-respect. Romance is beautiful, but so is independence. "Do you think you'll get married again?" Jennifer asked during one of our planning sessions. "Maybe. If I find someone who understands that marriage is a partnership, not a convenience. Someone who sees commitment as an opportunity, not a limitation. Someone who wouldn't dream of flirting with hotel staff during our honeymoon." I laughed, but it wasn't bitter anymore. It was just realistic. I'd learned to find humor in the absurdity of human behavior, including my own. I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst behavior. My apartment was smaller than the house Trevor and I had shared, but it felt bigger. It was decorated exactly the way I wanted, organized exactly the way I liked, and filled with the kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. "The weirdest part," I told my mother during one of our weekly calls, "is that I'm happier now than I was when I was married. I thought divorce would feel like failure, but it feels like success, like I finally stood up for myself. Madison, honey, you didn't fail at marriage. You succeeded at self-respect. There's a difference." She was right. I'd succeeded at something much more important than marriage. I'd succeeded at being true to myself. I'd succeeded at refusing to accept less than I deserved. I'd succeeded at turning a personal disaster into professional wisdom. The wedding industry is full of romance and fairy tales, but it's also full of reality. I'd learned to balance both. I could still believe in love while recognizing that not everyone is capable of it. I could still plan beautiful weddings while helping couples have realistic expectations. "You know what the most important thing I learned was?" I said to Jennifer as we packed up after another successful wedding. "I learned that you can't love someone into being a better person. You can only love yourself enough to demand better treatment." It was almost poetic. I'd started my career believing in fairy tales, gotten married believing in fairy tales, and ended up divorced believing in something better. Reality. Not harsh reality, but honest reality. The kind of reality that says you deserve to be with someone who chooses you every day, not just on your wedding day. "What's next for you?" Sarah asked during our final legal consultation. "More weddings, more clients, more opportunities to help people start their marriages with realistic expectations and genuine commitment. And maybe, eventually, another chance at love. But this time with someone who understands that 'till death do us part' means exactly that." I walked out of Sarah's office feeling lighter than I had in months. The sun was shining, Portland was beautiful, and I had a business to run and a life to live. A life that belonged entirely to me. In the end, family is whoever doesn't laugh at your face, just at the joke you became. And sometimes the best joke is the one where you get the last laugh.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.